Good evening, everyone. We're just going to give it a couple minutes just to let attendees join the room, and then we'll start here probably in about 2 minutes. Thanks. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the proposed Libra solar project. Thank you all very much for joining. We're very appreciative to have a number of people join and participate in this meeting. My name is Tanya Trice, and I'm the consultant lead to the BLM with Panorama Environmental, and I'm going to be facilitating tonight's meeting. Tonight's scoping meeting will include an introduction by the Carson City District Office District Manager, Kim Dow, followed by introductions of the participants from the BLM. After introductions, we will present on the proposed Libra solar project and will provide a short overview of the BLM process, NEPA process, key considerations for this project. Following the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session with responses from the BLM, and then we will open up the forum for verbal public input for the project record. Then we will close out the meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and the video will be posted to the project e-planning website. We'll post that address in the chat box. Now we'll turn it over to Kim Dow, Carson City District Office District Manager, for a short introduction.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the public scoping meeting for the Libra Solar Project. My name is Kim Dow, and I am the District Manager for the BLM Carson City District Office. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. The BLM completed the variance review for this Libra Solar Project in December of 2021, which is the process that considers solar energy development outside of established solar energy zones. The BLM has initiated the environmental planning required by the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA. Input provided during the variance review will be carried forward into this NEPA process for the Libra Solar Project. These virtual scoping meetings, along with the scoping period that will be open until May 24th, are part of the first steps of the NEPA process. During scoping, BLM asked for comments and input on the proposed project to better understand potential issues and concerns, as well as develop a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed action presented here today. The presentation tonight is intended to inform you of the project details, such as type of solar facility, location, size, timeline, and issues already identified through the variance and internal reviews. We will explain the NEPA process and what kind of information will be most helpful during the scoping period. Before we begin, we want to make sure everyone knows that we are still in the early stage of the NEPA process, so we may not have all the answers to your in-depth or specific questions. We will work hard to provide answers to your questions later in the meeting, but please know that even hearing your questions will help us better understand what needs to be analyzed. Before we begin with the presentation, I would like to introduce you to the BLM staff at the meeting today. In addition to myself, we have Melanie Hornsby. She's our BLM project manager. Cedra Rakestraw, our assistant field manager, and Tara Malsom, the lands and realty specialist. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Tanya.
Thanks, Kim. Tonight's forum will provide opportunities for questions and public input. After a presentation on the project, we'll have a question and answer session where written questions will be addressed by the BLM. Written questions can be submitted at any time during the meeting in the Q&A box that you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. But these questions will only be verbally addressed during the Q&A session. Questions may be answered by the BLM in writing in the Q&A box as well. We will also have an opportunity for verbal public input towards the very end of the scoping meeting. We'll have more information on those two opportunities later on. So through the scoping process, we want your help to identify and form key environmental issues of concern, potential mitigation measures to avoid or reduce potential effects of this project, and to inform the development of the proposed action and alternatives for consideration. Great, so now we'll talk about the proposed action. Libra Solar LLC submitted a right-of-way application for the Libra Solar project for the construction, operation, maintenance, and eventual decommissioning of a proposed 700 megawatt solar photovoltaic power generating facility with interconnection to the regional transmission system and battery storage of up to 700 megawatts. The project is proposed on approximately 5,778 acres of BLM administered lands managed by the Carson City District Office and is 11 miles southeast of the city of Yerington and 55 miles southeast of the Reno metropolitan area in Nevada. The map on the screen shows the proposed Libra Solar project. It's the red shape at the bottom of the map, adjacent to the Mineral Lion County line and east of the city of Yerington. Libra Solar LLC has proposed a generation tie transmission line. So that's a transmission line connecting the facility to the grid for the project, and that's shown in green on this map. The proposed gen tie line would be routed north as shown on the map before it turns west to connect into the existing Fort Churchill substation, which is shown as the red circle on the top of the map. From there, existing transmission and infrastructure is then utilized to transmit the electricity to the grid. This map shows the location of the proposed Libra Solar project in relation to the local roads and highways within the project vicinity, including the project access road, which is in Reese River Road and East Walker Road, State Route 208, North and South Main Street, State Route 827, State Route 337, US alternate Route 95, and US Route Alt 95 are also shown. The map on the screen here shows the layout of the proposed project elements. The Libra Solar project includes the installation of a solar field within the project site, so the red boundary, which is comprised of solar photovoltaic modules mounted on single-axis horizontal tracker structures combined with integrated battery storage systems, which are shown in the gray blocks. The solar arrays would connect to power conversion stations that would transmit electricity to the project substation, which is shown at the very top of the page in the yellow box. And it's connected through a series of above ground and underground collection systems. The collection systems convey the electricity from the power conversion station to the on-site substation through on-site transformers and stepping up the voltage there to 345 kV or 525 kilovolt transmission level. Once electricity reaches the project substation, it's delivered off-site to the existing Fort Churchill substation via the proposed interconnection gen tie line, as we've mentioned before. Additional facilities proposed for construction include telecommunication facilities, meteorological stations, and operations and maintenance building shown at the bottom left in pale yellow. It's a little hard to see. Laydown yards are shown as the locations in orange. That would be during construction, and site security and fencing would be installed around the project perimeter. It's difficult to see on this graphic, but Reese River Road State Route to see through the project site, which is shown in brown, would not be fenced, and access would be maintained through construction and the life of the project. The proposed solar arrays avoid major drainages that occur through the project area, which are the uncolored areas traversing through the site. Retention basins would be built to slow stormwater flows and are shown in the blue areas. The preliminary plan of development, also called a POD for the project, is available online on the project webpage, which is provided in the chat, and that's the document that provides a lot more information on the proposed project. The table on the screen here lists the project components that I just described, but it also includes the acreages or sizes. The project components table and the preliminary plan of development for the proposed project are available online, as we just mentioned, at the website. The internal electrical system is at 34.5 kilovolts, while the power will be stepped up to 345 or 525. It's not yet known which level at this point, at an on-site substation to be transmitted to the grid at the Fort Churchill substation. The project would commence construction at the end of 2024 if it's approved, and it would take approximately 6 months to complete. The average number of workers needed to construct the project is estimated at 400, with a peak of up to 700. I will now hand it over to the BLM to discuss the NEPA process. Shidra Rakstra, BLM Assistant Field Manager, will discuss the application review process next. Oh, I think you're on mute, Shidra.
Thank you, Tanya. The flow chart on the screen shows the application evaluation process, which begins with the submittal of a solar project application. The application is then prioritized based on the regulations and involves an interdisciplinary, team review. This helps the BLM prioritize and process the solar application workload more efficiently. After prioritization, the application is determined to be high priorities, moved into the solar application evaluation process, and involves public information forums and agency coordination. When the evaluation is complete, BLM will determine whether to continue to process the application and initiate the NEPA process. For the Libra solar project, BLM determined to continue processing the application and initiate the NEPA process. The scoping meetings are part of the early stages of the NEPA process for the project. Tara Mossam, BLM Realty Specialist, will now discuss the variance process in a little more detail. Thank you.
BLM completed review of the Libra solar project through the variance process described under the solar programmatic EIS. The variance process involved public outreach and coordination with appropriate federal, state, local, and tribal governments. Input was gathered through 2 virtual public information forums, an agency meeting, and associated public input period. During the public input period, verbal comments and written comments were received via email or physical mail. Agency coordination on the project yielded 3 comment letters received during the input period. Submissions during the input period were reviewed and summarized for the project. Issues identified from the input period will be carried forward into the NEPA process for the project. In addition to public and agency input, BLM also sent letters to initiate formal government-to-government tribal consultation. Tribal consultation is ongoing for the project. Additional information on the input received during the variance process for the Libra Solar project can be found at the Project e-Planning webpage. Melanie Hornsby, Project Lead, will present the NEPA process next.
Screen, you will see a flow chart outlining the NEPA process for the Libra Solar project. The NEPA process begins with the publication of a notice of intent, announcing the intentions of the BLM to complete an environmental impact statement. The notice of intent for the project was published on April 24th, and it initiated the 30-day public scoping period. The scoping meeting tonight is included in this step in the NEPA process. After scoping, BLM reviews the comments provided, generates issues to analyze, identifies any suggested alternatives, and develops the draft environmental impact statement. The draft environmental impact statement for the project will be published for a 45-day public review period, initiated by the publication of a notice of availability. Comments submitted during the public review period are reviewed, and substantive comments are responded to in the final EIS. The final EIS is made available for 30 days with publication of a notice of availability. BLM would issue a record of decision based on the environmental impact statement. If the project is approved, a right-of-way grant and notice to proceed would be generated. I will now turn it back over to Tanya to discuss resource considerations for the project.
Thank you, Melanie. So the input received during the variance process and preliminary interdisciplinary team review yielded resource topic concerns that are shown on this slide. These resources and issues are being considered as part of the analysis for the environmental impact statement. Resource areas being addressed include visual resources, recreation, socioeconomics, environmental justice, wildlife and vegetation, rangeland resources, air quality and traffic and dust, cultural and tribal resources, public health and safety, mineral resources, and water resources. In order to adequately analyze the effects of the project, multiple resource technical studies have been prepared. The list on the screen shows the technical studies currently identified for the project, as well as the status of the report or study. After the public scoping period, BLM will determine if any additional technical studies are needed to analyze effects from the project. The next few slides provide additional information on the key issues or considerations currently anticipated and being addressed, but note that the list is not comprehensive. The complete list of issues and resource concerns will be presented in the draft EIS, and that'll include relevant concerns that are raised during the scoping process. So concerns related to biological resources and vegetation resources have been identified. Issues include potential effects to wildlife species and potential loss of wildlife species habitat, sensitive vegetation, and effects to soils from the proposed solar project. Other concerns include avian and bat collisions with infrastructure. No federally listed threatened or endangered species are expected to occur within the project solar site, nor were any identified during surveys. The project is also entirely outside of mapped habitat for bi-state sage-grouse. Coordination with the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has and will continue to occur. A biological resources technical report has been prepared, and that report includes the results of various surveys that were conducted for the project, including avian, eagle, bat, botanical, small mammal, and burrowing owl surveys, and that report is currently under review and will inform the EIS. Visual considerations include impacts to views from recreational uses and sensitive areas. The project's within an area of generally low value visual sensitivity, but surrounding areas have higher sensitivity. In order to analyze impacts and to demonstrate consistency or determine consistency with the visual resource management class for the project area, visual resource simulations have been completed, which are presented in a visual resources technical report that is also currently under review by the BLM. Recreational issues are related to access to public lands, recreational use of the project area, which includes some off-highway vehicle use, and the proximity of the project access to the Walker River State Recreation Area, which that area is shown in green on the figure. Information on off-highway vehicle use and trails within and adjacent to the proposed project area have been identified through a couple different methods, including coordination and a site visit with the local OHV representatives. This data, as well as analysis of project access and proximity to the Walker State Recreation Area, has been incorporated into a land use report. It should be noted that the main access to the mountain range to the east along Reese River Road through the project site will be maintained open and accessible to OHV and other uses throughout the life of the project. The project overlaps BLM grazing allotments, known as the Perry Springs Deadman and the Gray Hills allotments. The entire site is used for grazing in accordance with these leases. Grazing infrastructure improvements have been mapped, and the applicant has met with the BLM and the grazing operator to discuss ways to reduce impacts to the grazing allotment that are being incorporated into the project, as well as that land use report, which is also under review. The project's outside of wild horses and burro herd management areas, although they're very close by. The BLM is consulting with the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. This consultation process is being incorporated with the NEPA process for the project. A cultural resources survey was completed for the project, which BLM is reviewing and has reviewed, provided initial site recommendations, and is transmitting the report and recommendations to the Nevada State Historic Preservation Office for their review and concurrence. The BLM has initiated engagement with Native American tribal governments, which included sending letters to invite the tribes to initiate formal government-to-government consultation. 8 tribes were invited to consult, including the Walker River Paiute Tribe, Bridgeport Indian Colony, Fallon Paiute Shoshone Tribe, Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, Reno Sparks Indian Colony, Washoe Tribe of Nevada and California, Yerington Paiute Tribe, and the Yamba Shoshone Tribe. Tribal consultation for the project is ongoing for the life of the project. The project would require Sorry about that, folks. We ran into some technical issues where the computer we were running the presentation from suddenly turned off. So apologize for the disruption, and we are just picking back up on slide 23. So we're talking about socioeconomics and air quality. The project would require many workers during peak construction, which could have some impact on public services, including in Lyon County. The project is expected to bring revenues to the region and Mineral County. The project construction could generate dust, including along access roads and other pollutants, but ultimately will have a positive impact in regard to climate change by providing an alternative power source to fossil fuels. A socioeconomics and environmental justice report, as well as air quality modeling and a technical report, have been prepared. The socioeconomic report addresses impacts to housing and services, and the environmental justice analysis addresses low-income, minority, and Native American populations. The air quality report addresses dust generation along access roads in particular, and includes ways to reduce dust. The region has a long history of mining, but no active mining claims were found within the project's solar footprint at the time of the variance process. The privately owned Nevada Copper Pumpkin Hollow project is located just north of the project solar site. In order to analyze concerns, information has been gathered on the mineral claims in the area in a supplemental report to the land use report. Several ephemeral drainages pass through the project site. Some of the flows appear to be connected to the East Walker River, particularly along the western portion of the access road. A jurisdictional delineation and determination has been submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers. If portions of the project area are jurisdictional, such as along the access road and Gentile alignment, and could require placement of fill, a section 404 permits would be obtained, likely through the nationwide permit program. A drainage study is also being prepared for the project, which BLM and other federal and local governments will review. As we mentioned earlier, retention basins are proposed to reduce flow velocities and sediment flow offsite. Construction will require a water source. A groundwater study is currently underway, which will consist of a groundwater impact analysis to model the required groundwater pumping and analyze the groundwater flow and recharge effects in the area. Water rights are also being considered. Input gathered during the variance process yielded concerns about the proposed Libra solar project in relation to other proposed projects within the project vicinity. Impacts from the proposed project and other actions within a given area and timeframe will be analyzed as part of the cumulative effects analysis for the project. Cumulative effects are those impacts on the environment that result from the incremental impact of the proposed action when added to other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions, regardless of who is undertaking the action. This means actions proposed on federal, state, local, or private lands within an identified area and timeframe would be included in the cumulative effects analysis. On the screen, you'll see a map of the proposed solar projects within the project vicinity that are at various stages of review and processing by the BLM and other agencies. These proposed projects are considered reasonably foreseeable projects and would be included in the cumulative effects analysis for the Libra solar project. Other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions will be identified during the NEPA process, including the scoping period. On the map, you'll see the Libra solar project outlined in red at the bottom of the page. Other projects that would be considered include those 4 other solar projects, a geothermal project, Greenlink West, which is adjacent to the site, and the Gentile, Greenlink North, and then the Pumpkin Hollow Copper Mine open pit development project. If you have any information on additional projects or actions within or adjacent to the proposed Libra solar project, that information would be helpful for the NEPA analysis. Great. Okay, currently we're in the public scoping period for the Libra solar project, as we started out this meeting mentioning. Tonight's public scoping meeting and the scoping period that lasts through May 24th provides you an opportunity to provide input on the project. The information gathered during the meeting and the scoping period will inform the NEPA process and assist BLM in determining issues, impacts, and potential alternatives that will be addressed in the upcoming analysis. After this public scoping meeting, we will continue to gather comments on the project until May 24th. The information we gather will be considered in the draft environmental impact statement, which is expected in winter of 2023, so the end of this year. For more information on the project, as we've mentioned a few times now, you can view the project webpage, e-planning. You can email BLM at the email address shown on the screen as well. So helpful input and comments from you would include things like those shown on the slide. So suggestions on how to refine the proposed project with methods for reducing or avoiding impacts to resources such as wildlife, botanical species, dust, soils, landscape views, water resources, or recreational uses. Comments on reasonable alternatives to the proposed action are also very helpful. Additionally, identification of specific issues or concerns which may be evaluated in detail in the analysis or need to be evaluated, as well as identifying other past, present, or future projects would also be very helpful. So the most helpful type of comments to BLM are substantive comments. which are comments that contribute something new and important to the discussion. To be most helpful, comments should be as specific as possible. A substantive comment provides new information about the proposed action, an alternative, or the analysis. It identifies a different way to meet the needs, suggests alternate methods, and the reasons why they should be used. It makes factual corrections or identifies a different source of credible research, which, if used in the analysis, could result in different effects. A substantive comment would not be a comment in favor or against the proposed action without reasoning. An example of a substantive comment would be something like, the project is partially located within a floodplain per the Federal Emergency Management Agency or FEMA maps. An alternative should be considered to remove the project from the floodplain. Note that's just an example. The solar site is actually not in the floodplain here. Okay, so that concludes the presentation portion of tonight's meeting. At this time, we're going to commence the question and answer session. During this session, please type in questions that you may have into the Q&A box. So this session is just going to be for questions, and BLM is going to provide answers, and we're not going to take verbal comments at this time. That will come later if that is why you joined. The questions will be answered live by BLM, or they may be answered in the box in writing. Again, there'll be no verbal questions during this Q&A, but we will open that up after this Q&A to verbal comments. And so your verbal input will be recorded and transcribed for the record once we get to that part of the session. Okay, so we will now start the question and answer session. Questions can be submitted using the question and answer box by following the instructions on the slide. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A feature to submit questions. Please understand that some questions will be answered live during the session and question and answer session, while some may be answered in writing in the Q&A feature. We'll try to answer most of them live. Anyone can see all the questions answered in the Q&A by clicking on the Show All button. As questions begin to come in, I will facilitate asking the questions, and the BLM in the room here with me today will answer them. Okay. So thank you for your patience as we're waiting for questions to be organized. We actually have just a couple that have come in. So we may get started on those questions. So I see the first question is from Spencer Quam, and it says, for site prep, rather than disc and roll and grading, please consider low impact construction as at Gemini. And I think I can answer that question. I think that's a great suggestion, and I think that is a great suggestion for the alternatives analysis for the project. We do know that other projects are using this approach, and there's information and data, and so that is something that is going to be considered. All right. The next question from Spencer Quam as well is, pleased to see drainage is maintained. What are the recommended buffers? I can also I can also address this question. I think that is something that's going to come out of the impact analysis. And so again, the drainages have been looked at, and a jurisdictional delineation has been prepared and submitted to the Corps to determine if they're jurisdictional or not. And then part of the hydrology analysis, which is currently underway, is going to look at those drainages, what the impacts from the project are, and it will identify whether buffers are needed or not, depending on what those impacts are. And then we have a third question from Beverly Smith. And that question is, what is the life of the project? That one I can answer. It's also found in the plan of development, but The initial life matches the right-of-way grant lease, which is 30 years, which starts after the completion of construction.
It starts when the grant is.
Oh, when the grant is issued, sorry. That starts when the grant is issued. So there would be a year and a half of construction followed by 28 and a half years of the project life. And then at that point, it would be revisited. Great. Do we have any other questions that folks want to ask in the Q&A? Great, we have one from Laura Cunningham. Okay. Will the impacts to waterfowl be analyzed from a giant tall gen-tie line wrapping around it? Okay, thank you for that question. So this is being addressed in the biological resources technical report. So the there is a section in the EIS that will address avian species, including waterfowl, and it will address what the effects of transmission line are, as well as what impacts could be and what mitigations may be needed to reduce those effects. The next question is from Spencer Quam. Why is a right-of-way for 5,778 acres being considered when only 3,383 acres are needed? I can actually answer this one as well. The right-of-way includes the whole solar site as well, which includes more than just the ground disturbance. It's the red square around the whole solar facility. But it also includes the gen-tie, which is, I believe, 23 miles long on BLM land and a 200-foot right-of-way. So when all those acreages are added up together, it is 5,778 acres. However, keep in mind that's not 5,778 acres of disturbance. That is the right-of-way grant area within which the project will be located. Okay, Beverly Smith has a question. East Walker Road is not an improved road. There are 3 irrigation crossings that are single lane roads. What is the plan to improve East Walker Road? Thank you for this question. And I think that this is still being looked at and considered as part of the analysis. And so we really appreciate this question and communication with the folks that live on East Walker Road. I think part of the analysis will include looking at that, looking at what the effects are, and looking at if upgrades are needed and how they would be performed. And Spencer Quam asks, will the fencing be minimized and allow game permeability? This is also a topic that is addressed in the biological resources technical report. During the biological surveys and looking at the distribution maps, the area isn't a distribution area for large game, and there wasn't a lot of signs of them. So this is something that will be considered and looked at. At this time, the proposed project includes fencing, but again, the impact analysis will look at this. All right, folks, we're just bear with us for a few minutes while we're collecting a couple more questions and working with BLM on answers. We have a question from Beverly Smith. Is there another access road being considered? This is something that is also a great feedback and input in terms of looking at alternatives. So I think at this point, this is something that can be considered in the alternatives analysis. And so it's good feedback. Okay. And Spencer Qualm says, just checked e-planning, the variance docs are not there. I think we will take a closer look and we'll post them. They were posted, I think they were posted previously, but we will take a look and get those up ASAP. Okay. I have a question from Laura Cunningham. Will cows be allowed to graze in the solar fields? No, cows generally are not allowed to graze within the solar facility due to safety. There's a lot of electrical equipment in there. However, there are ways to work with the grazing operations to allow for movement around areas and to provide and support the grazing operation in the surrounding areas. There's a question, is there sagebrush vegetation on the site? I believe there is sagebrush type of vegetation. However, the project is not within bi-state sage grouse habitat. The biological resources technical report includes a botanical survey as well as reconnaissance that identifies the various vegetation communities on site. And so as soon as those are completed and reviewed, they will be available on the project website, and this will be addressed within the EIS. Do we have any more questions or any follow-up questions from the answers provided so far? Beverly Smith asks, where will the 700 employees be housed? So there is a socioeconomic report and study that was completed, and that analysis includes an in-plan modeling, which also looks at where the employees would come from. And the vast majority would come from the Reno, probably the Reno and Carson City metropolitan areas. There will be some studies done to look more closely at how employees would travel to the site as well as employees would stay as part of the analysis. We have another question from Spencer Qualm. I noticed Yarrington gets a couple inches of snow each year. Can the panels handle this? Will they be rotated to max angle? So yes, the panels can handle snow, and I think that is factored into the performance and the output of the panels and when considering and designing the facility. These projects go through an initial design, but then prior to construction, there is additional design that is completed where the panels and configurations and how they're operated is finalized. They do rotate and they tend to rotate following the angle of the sun, as well as move to different positions based on weather conditions or storms. Do we have any more questions or follow-up questions in the Q&A? Well, and while we wait, I just want to remind everyone that the scoping period goes through May 24th. After this meeting, you'll be able to provide comments in writing to the BLM via email or mail. So I believe in the chat box, we still have the information in terms of how to provide comments in writing, as well as a link to the e-planning website. Do we have any more questions? Nope, here we have. From Laura Cunningham, will the livestock operator be compensated for loss of rangeland and forage? I'm going to answer this live. So the applicant is asked to work with the livestock operator, and it's our understanding that those conversations are currently underway in order to work out whether compensation or other measures are needed. Do you have any other questions in the Q&A? So remember, this is your opportunity to ask questions that will be answered. The next part of the meeting will go into a public input session where we will call on folks who want to speak and can provide comments for the record. However, keep in mind that we will not be answering those questions directly. You can continue to type in the Q&A and we can continue to provide answers, written answers to questions. The next question is from Spencer Quam. Can the Fort Churchill substation handle the extra power before either Greenlink is built? I don't know exactly the answer to this question, but part of the process, the developer does work with NV Energy in order to make sure that the interconnections and needs are all met through a pretty involved process. So that's currently underway. We have a question from Beverly Smith. How many employees will there be after construction is over? And I don't remember exact number, but it is in the plan of development, but I think it's somewhere between 15 and 20 employees total. As a reminder, while we wait to see if there's any more comments, you will also be able to comment using the Participate Now button on e-planning via email or via mail to the BLM Carson City District Office until May 24th. At the very end of the session, we'll show you some slides of how to go to e-planning and comment there. It's very easy, but we'll cover that at the very end of the session. Do we have any more questions? All right, we'll maybe give it one more minute if anyone thinks of anything else. And remember, after we close the question and answer session, you still can submit questions into the box and they may be answered in written format instead of verbally at that point. We're just going to give it another minute for folks. Okay, well, seeing no more questions, we would move on, we'll move on to the public input portion of the of this session. Okay, so as I mentioned, we will not be answering questions live. If you have any additional questions, actually, we have one last question. I will answer it. Will busing employees be an option? Yes, I think this is something that will be looked at through the socioeconomic analysis and plan. Great. Okay, so just a reminder, we will not be answering questions live during the public input, verbal input session. If you have any additional questions, you can continue to drop them into the Q&A box and we will respond in writing, or you can email or mail any remaining questions to the BLM after the meeting. As a reminder, anyone can see all questions answered in the Q&A box under the Show All button. Okay, we're going to take verbal comments following the order in which people pre-registered and said yes or maybe to wanting to provide public comments. We will call your name. When you hear your name, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen and we will open your microphone. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand with *9 and then unmute and mute using *6. You will see a 2-minute timer on the next slide, and this will display the amount of time you have for your public comment. We are reserving 2 minutes per public comment. After going through the list of people who pre-registered to speak, we will move on to anyone who may want to provide public input that did not identify that they wanted to provide comments when they registered. Keep in mind as well, our current list was those who registered through about 5:30 today. So if you registered after that, you may need to raise your hand after we go through the list of folks who commented, but who indicated that they wanted to provide a comment before that. So the BLM wants to hear from all members of the public. However, out of respect for everyone's participation and input, we do ask that you follow these guidelines. Please stay within your allotted time. On the slide, you'll see as the time is running out, so it's a big timer. We ask that you watch this and be cognizant of that time and wrap up your comment. Please be respectful of others that are speaking. Please refrain from profanity. If these guidelines are not followed, your microphone will be muted and we will have to move on to the next person. So let's go ahead and get started. Up first, we have Lindsay Ellington, and you can raise your hand and we will unmute your microphone. It looks like Lindsay may not be on. So we will go to the second registered commenter, who is Laura Cunningham. If you can raise your hand, we will unmute you. Yeah. Bear with us for just 1 second. I think with the computer shutting down earlier, we need to make a couple adjustments so that I can unmute folks.
Oh, hello. My name is Laura Cunningham, and I live in Nye County and travel through that area a lot. And I'm concerned that we're using high-value public lands, BLM lands, for energy that might not serve the local areas, but go to, you know, warehouses.
Laura Cunningham, are you able to
Reno
unmute
Sparks.
and speak? Oh, here we go.
Hi, I'm unmuted.
No, we can
Hello, can
hear
you
you.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We got the first part of your comment. I can start the timer over for you. And Tanya, I just made Melanie a co-host, so you can help that as well. Let me start your timer over for you. Just 1 second, Laura.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, Carrie, can you restart that? Our this computer had a volume issue. I think we're good now. Laura Cunningham, can you hear us and can you speak?
Yeah,
There we go.
I am concerned about wildlife. I'm concerned about native species that inhabit sagebrush steppe, and I'm concerned about dust issues for local residents and also erosion. We had a huge series of storms this winter with big snow, even down to where I am in Beatty, Nevada. And I'm just concerned that putting a gigantic utility scale solar project won't benefit anyone locally or in our central area of Nevada, but the power will just go to, I don't know, the Tesla Gigafactory. I'm also really concerned about putting a potentially 525 kilovolt giant transmission Gentile line wrapping around Mason Valley Wildlife area with a lot of waterfowl. Are there going to be collisions? I just don't see how all these impacts are going to be mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Kevin Emmerich. I'm not sure if he is on, but if he is, can you raise his hand? Okay, it does not look like he's on the participant list. But next up, we have Spencer Kwong. Can you please raise your hand and we'll unmute you? All right, you should be able to speak now. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you now.
Okay, very good. Yeah, my comments were, you've largely answered them. You know, we're looking at tons of solar projects across Nevada. The Southern Nevada District Office has a lot of experience with this, and we're involved with that. And I mentioned Gemini, where they just drove over the landscape and installed these things. So I'm happy to hear you're considering that alternative. And I'm also happy to see you're preserving the drainages, and just to make sure that the buffers are wide enough so that panels don't get washed out. And that was our main concern there. And then game permeability. I agree with Laura that there are game out there. It's not just sagebrush. And excuse me very much. Just to make a permeable fencing, don't fence across drainages. There's lots of examples of good quality fencing that's got roadrunner holes. I know we don't have roadrunners up here, but it also has gaps for desert tortoises, which we don't have up here. But there are ways to put in game-friendly fencing that could keep, if the plant life is maintained and the soil's not all broken up, it would just help with the biodiversity of the area and keep the dust down. And thanks very much for hosting this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Beverly Smith. If you would raise your hand and I will attempt to unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, that worked that time.
Okay, great. This is Beverly Smith. I live on East Walker Road. My house is 30 feet from the road. I own both sides of the road. As you know, we have the state park out past us. Having 700 employees going by our house for 2 years is going to impact us tremendously. We already have speed bumps out here that aren't that effective. The dust is terrible already. I just can't tell you how concerned we are about the traffic coming by here even after the construction period's over. 15 to 20 employees coming by here just adds to all the traffic already. And like I said in my comments, there's 3 ditch crossings that are literally single lane roads. The road itself is not a double lane road. It is not up to any kind of standard. And that's just out to Reese River Road, which is even worse than ours. So I guess that's our biggest concern. I just wanted to be on record that we have a lot of concerns about the access.
Thank you, Beverly.
All right.
Next up, we have Matt Giltner. If he is on, raise your hand. It doesnणी look like he is on, so we'll go to the next person on the list, who is Ricardo Graf. Ricardo, can you raise your hand and I'll unmute you. You should be able to talk now.
Thanks very much. We really appreciate the opportunity that we've been given as a company. My name is Ricardo Graf, managing partner and co-founder of Revia Power. For the record, we are the developer behind the Gemini Solar Project. We started that project from its inception through the full NEPA approval process, and really appreciate everybody attending today. And we look forward to engaging with all the stakeholders to come up with solutions that we can manage ourselves as a proponent. And thanks again for attending.
Thanks, Ricardo. Next, we have Christopher Tosto. If you are on and want to speak, raise your hand. I'm not sure that you're on. Doesn't look like it. So next we have Jefferson M. If you are on, raise your hand. Actually, it doesn't look like Jefferson is on either. Let's see here. Next, we have Marlene Begay, but I don't see her on the list either. But if you are there, raise your hand. Nope. Carrie, can you go to the next slide? Yes. Okay. Next, we have Marcus Pearson, and I see you are on. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay. And if you don't want to speak, don't raise your hand. Okay. Next up, we have Chris Brooks. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. There we go. Allow you to talk. You should be able to speak. Unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, this is Chris Brooks, also with the Revia Power, and I would like to thank everyone for showing up this evening and providing valuable comments. And we are excited to develop this project that will provide power to the residents of the region. And so we're just really happy to both provide power to the region and to participate in this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And then next we have Jacob Haas. If you would like to speak, yep, I'm gonna let you now. You can unmute your microphone and speak.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, my name's Jacob Haas. I'm the business manager for IBW Local 401, and if this project gets approved, we'll be supplying most of the manpower for this project. And I just want to say that anytime we do a lot of large scale solar projects, and we always try to hire as much as we can from the local communities to help with the impact of housing and everything else, and help the communities out by putting people that live within those communities to work. So that's what we will try to do to help facilitate some of that with this. And I just thank you for my time.
Great, thank you so much. And then last that had registered was Dustin Hallman. Not sure if you're on, but if you are, raise your hand. Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm going to allow you to talk, and you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Hi, this is Dustin Homan. I'm the road director for Lyon County. East Walker Road is a county maintained road, as Beverly Smith had mentioned. We do maintain that road. It is just a dirt road out to Reese River Road from Highway 208. We also have concerns with the amount of traffic for the construction of the solar plant. And we would be more than willing to be able to sit down and have a meeting with everybody that needs to be involved on the access via East Walker Road out to Reese River Road. And I can furnish my email, phone number, whatever you guys would like, so we could sit down and discuss the access road to get out there.
Great, will do. Thank you so much. I think that is everyone that had registered through about 5:30 today. If there's anyone else who would like to speak or would like to speak again, please go ahead and raise your hand and I will unmute you. Okay. It doesn't look like there's anyone else. However, we will stay on. The meeting is scheduled till 8 p.m. And so we will stay on. Folks are welcome to stay or go if you please. But we will stay on just in case anyone else comes on. There is a recording, I want to remind, of the whole meeting. And so any other additional comments will be recorded. And that will be provided, the recording will be provided on the e-planning website. I guess we can go, we have a couple more slides, actually, we can talk about how to comment, and then we'll just stay on the line after that. So let's see here. So this slide just shows how to provide additional comments, which we've mentioned a couple times. The e-planning website provides the link to participate now and provide comments directly through that website. You can also send comments by email or by mail, as shown here. And again, this public scoping input period goes until May 24th. So anytime during that period, you can submit your comments. Next slide. And we just have a couple slides here that show how to use the e-planning website for submitting comments. So if you go to the site from the link, you will come up to this page that says Libra Solar Project. It has some basic information on the project in the main window, but then if you look to the left, there's documents, which has the documents including the plan of development, the scoping materials, and we'll get the variance materials up there. Again, and then below that in green, you see how it says participate now. If you click on that, you will come to another page. Carrie, next slide. So that will take you to this page, and you'll see in the red square, the area where rectangle where you can provide your comments. So you click on participate now there next to the notice of intent. And that takes you to this screen, which will allow you to fill in some information and then provide your comment and submit. And it's as easy as that. That comes directly to the BLM. And I just want to note that before including your address, phone number, email address, or other personal identifying information in your comment, you should be aware that your entire comment, including your personal identifying information, may be publicly available at any time. While you can ask that your personal identifying information be withheld from public review, BLM cannot guarantee that they will be able to do so. Anonymity is not allowed for submissions from organizations or businesses and from individuals identifying themselves as representatives or officials of organizations or businesses. And with that, we will leave it open if there's anyone else who wants to make any comments. Or Kim, do you want to provide any last comments? Okay, we will just leave it open if anyone else wants to provide any more comments.
Second.
Hey there, for anyone left, it just looks like two folks are on, Beverly and Chris. We're at 8 o'clock and it doesn't look like we had any more questions or anyone else pop on that wanted to speak. And so we're gonna close it now. And thanks again for anyone who's left for participating, and do submit comments by the 24th. Thank you.